Good evening. Welcome to the March Health and Human Services Committee. Is there anybody from the public that would wish to address the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any additions, deletions, corrections to last month's minutes? All right, we're going to go fast. Resolutions.
First resolution this evening, amending the 2017 county budget relative to community services programs and authorizing amended agreements in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Mr. Ferris, second. Mr. Drake. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next, amending the 2017 county budget to reappropriate the Delivery System Reform Incentive Payment Program Fund and Community Services Department.
May I have a motion, please? Mrs. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Doldo. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Third resolution this evening is amending the 2016 county budget relative to additional revenue from the New York State Office of Children and Family Services for Youth Development Program.
Mr. Ferris, second. Mr. Doldo. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well, we have some departmental reports within our packet here, and we also have some staff here. Is there anybody that would like to comment to the committee at all tonight? Well, is there anybody from the floor that would like to bring anything up? I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Ferris, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, all in favor? We're adjourned.
The next session will be equally quick.
Good evening. Calling to order the Finance and Rules Standing Committee meeting for March. At this time, I'd like to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Any corrections, deletions, additions? Okay, and privilege of the floor. Anyone care to address the committee? Seeing no one coming to the microphone, we'll move on to our special presentation. Could I introduce to you the Chief Executive Officer of the Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency, Donald Alexander.
Thank you, Chairman Michael. I appreciate that. I brought a few comments to make tonight. So how long do we have? I apologize, by the way. I know a couple of you have had to put up with me now 2 weeks running, so you're really going to earn your money. There's no doubt about that. And I will also parenthetically tell you that Mr. Monticelli embarrassed me terribly as we interviewed candidates for the president of JCC the other day. It was kind of a spectacle. He asked this one candidate whether she could cook or not, and I thought that was inappropriate. But actually, I was the one that did that and embarrassed Michael, so just thought I'd let you know. Before I begin, let me just take a second to introduce a couple of folks here who have joined me, because if we can't outsmart you, we're going to outnumber you, and that's what our plan was tonight. So first of all, let me introduce our board and so on. Chairman Dave Converse, who was a former legislator, and you may remember that. He's served on the IDA board for, I think, 24 years now. Isn't it, Dave? 23 years? 21, 22. He's been chair for a number of years, and he had a full head of hair when he accepted that responsibility. Good guy. One of the newer members of our board, Rob Aliasso, who's been a tremendous addition, works for Stebbins Engineering, and gets the financial business of the IDA down pat. We appreciate that. He handled our loan review function this morning and did a grand job of it. And I'm just kind of going down the pike here. Joe Russell, attorney, is the attorney for the IDA, and Joe has stepped into the shoes of former attorney Jim Heery and done a bang-up job, and really appreciate it. Our newest member is one of your own, and that's this guy sitting over here. Want to welcome Bill to our board. We indoctrinated him the other day, and his wife is no longer speaking to me. So just thought I'd mention that, and thanks, Bill, for joining us. I think you'll enjoy the activities that we have going. Yes, that's right. And it's only been a couple of weeks. Yeah, absolutely. I'm here to kind of brief you about the draft uniform tax exemption policy, which the IDA is considering. And involved in all of this, not only is the board members, but staff members. And on backing up our board here is Marshall Weir, who does the marketing for the county and for the IDA and does a really terrific job of it. Jay, as you probably know, Jay Matson is our ag coordinator. We're one of the few counties in the state, if not the only one now, that has a devoted agricultural developer. And Jay does a bang-up job of that, and I want to appreciate what he does. Next to him is a guy who puts up with more stuff than you could possibly believe. He's my deputy. He's the guy that does all the work of the agency. I just stand and look pretty, and that's Dave Zembak. Dave, thanks so much. Okay, did I miss anybody in this crew? Anyway, that's the cast of characters, and like I say, we thought we'd outnumber you if we couldn't outsmart you. We have a uniform tax exemption policy, a draft on the table, and I wanted to just spend just a couple of minutes to talk about that tonight and maybe answer any questions that you might have. As you may or may not know, some of the new members may not know, there are 109 industrial development agencies in the state, all of whom have to have a uniform tax exempt policy, a UTEP. It is required by law. There is no exception to that. And so as a result of that, Jefferson County, who's been at this now 47 years, has had a uniform tax policy in place since the beginning. The UTEP is supposed to be reviewed within a 5-year period. It's best practice and accepted practice that within a 5-year period, each one of the uniform tax policies is reviewed by the board to determine its current effectiveness. And I would tell you that the tax policy we have in place now was drafted in 2004. Now, it's been reviewed a couple of times over those periods as required, but it hasn't been changed at all since 2004. So the board, and I really am just the spokesman for these folks, reviewed the document and said, look, it needs some revision, needs some updating. Things have changed fairly dramatically since 2004, and since this is the financial underpinning for the development work that we do, we ought to make sure that it reflects a current thinking, current attitude. Actually, the uniform tax policy that we're proposing recently is really a modest, there's not a lot of major adjustments to the policy from the 2004, and I'll highlight those in just a second, because I think you'll probably want to focus on those. We have, as a matter of law and a matter of practice, we have sent out notifications to every taxing entity within the county, officially notifying them that we are taking these steps to change our uniform tax policy. We have held public hearings about this. Everyone has seen, I believe, a copy of these documents. Again, it's fairly modest, the changes. All of this is important for us because it is essentially the underpinning, a jump-off point for how we would try to encourage development in our county using incentive devices. And I will tell you that these devices are probably the most understood documents God ever created, because no matter what we do with a payment in lieu of tax agreement, there is going to be some issues and some reflection of whether they are good or bad for the community. It's the nature of the beast. But we have to have these things so that we at least have something we can present to a developer that says Jefferson County is willing to sit and discuss a project and to some extent extend benefits to them by way of tax forgiveness. It is by no means the end of the discussion. It is simply the start. A couple of real important points to consider when we are talking about the uniform tax policy. It allows for a condition called a deviation. And when we're negotiating with a developer, it is almost always the case that a deviation occurs, that this rather broad-based document would not, is not intended to cover all of the eventualities of a particular development that might be encouraged to come to Jefferson County. We range from small farms who may produce some kind of a beverage to a major manufacturer. And there is simply no way you can define one document going in that covers all those bases. So we have a deviation policy. What that means is that when we bring a project to you as a county board, we have discovered that it does not fit within the uniform tax policy. Therefore, you're going to have to pass on whether you agree with the deviations and with the incentives we provided or not. If you don't agree as one entity, because typically there's at least 3 entities that are affected by a pilot, sometimes 4. But if you disagree and say, no, this is not, we don't want this, the deal is off. Any one of the taxing jurisdictions, we call them affected taxing jurisdictions. If you disagree with what's being proposed and vote against it as a body, then that's done. We're not going to take it any farther than that. And if it's a village, they can do the same thing. If it's a town, if it's a school district, all of those entities have the same opportunity to simply say no. And that's the way it should be. To be clear, you are the elected body. You are the elected officials. Our board knows that you have the responsibility of elected officials. We, on the other hand, I believe, have the responsibility of presenting projects to you that this board deems worthy of consideration. Doesn't mean we make the final decision. Doesn't mean we're in favor of one thing or another. It just means that we have reviewed these projects and found them to create value for our community. Now, the value can be in the number of jobs. It can be in the increasing amount of tax base. It could be something esoteric like, a community absolutely has to have a blank, therefore we've been able to create this. We don't get involved in retail, typically. That's not our issue. We do, however, work closely with manufacturers. I spent most of the afternoon dealing with the water infiltration problem. Now, that's not exactly something you're going to find in the UTEP, but it's the kind of stuff that this staff does a great job in working with our existing and projected clients. We have to create an environment in Jefferson County, I believe, where we can say to a developer, come to us, let's sit and talk, let's work out what are the issues we're going to be facing collectively, and then see if the taxing entities for whom this will be applicable will find that beneficial. You guys have the overarching, and I must say, difficult responsibility to reflect the issues and the attitudes of the entire county. One of the things that we work closely with is a local village or a local town. They're a little more confined issue, a little more confined constituency, and it's a little easier to get your arms around what they're thinking. You, on the other hand, have a large geographic area to represent. And so when we present this, we will try to present these things as how does it benefit every single taxpayer in the county of Jefferson. And we use this as our method to reach out and grab people who might not otherwise locate in Jefferson County. I would parenthetically tell you that if you think it is easy to develop the economy in the state of New York, particularly in rural Jefferson County, it is not. We've got issues to contend with, and we're going to have to overcome those. And we have to overcome those in a number of methods, most of which are presented to us by state law. They give us the opportunity to dispense these incentives, if you will. Exactly how we deploy those incentives, that's up to us as a community. But we need to have that if we're going to compete, not only with counties in the state, but counties around the nation, but moreover, countries around the world. You have to remember that there are thousands of communities around the world salivating to find the kind of development we're after every single day of our lives here. And in addition to that, we use these devices to try to maintain. Recently, we did a pilot agreement for New York Air Brake. Why? Because they needed an expansion of their research and development area. Now, that was important for us because it solidified the fact that New York Air Brake is part of our community and will stay here. They always have the option, and don't ever think that because they're located here and have been located here for 100 years, they will always be here. That just does not follow anymore. Companies can easily pack up and do something. So when they come to us and say, look, we need a hand getting this thing done, we got to step in. And that's the retention side of what we do. And the UTEP plays into all of that. Now, there are a couple of important sidebars within the agreement that I know you want to talk about. One of those is the term of the pilot, or the potential term of the pilot. We are advocating in this document a term of up to 20 years. Okay, people will say, well, that's a long time. And yes, it is. But the reason we are advocating for a 20-year rather than a 15 or a 10-year, which are other options, of course, or any term between, we are advocating for that because larger projects, which we hope to cultivate for here, are financed over a longer period of time. If you take a $300 million project, and believe it or not, we have two of those right now on the table, two $300 million projects. That's a lot of money. If you're going to finance that money, what these financing folks need or want is to see a pilot agreement which is fixing one of their major expenses, which is taxes. And whether or not we abate 50% or 30% or whatever, the most principal aspect of what we can do is fix whatever this agreement is. We put it in writing. It's not that they don't pay taxes. It is that we have designed a plan which enables them to pay taxes and fix that so they can go to their funders and say, okay, the community is behind us. We have this agreement. Here's what we're going to do. Now, 20 years would certainly be a maximum. We're not advocating that every project gets a 20-year abatement. It just doesn't make any sense. Some of the smaller ones certainly do not induce that kind of an activity. But a $300 million project, who would obviously substantially impact the tax base, which would make your job and budget a hell of a lot easier, that is worth advocating for. Now, you can reject that. You know, if let's say that one of these $300 million projects comes along, we propose a 20-year pilot, you can always say, doesn't work for me. But this business about calling that corporate welfare is just nonsense. It is a matter of a competitive nature in which we are deeply engrossed, and if we don't offer these kinds of incentives, we don't even get in the ballpark. Jefferson County is not on the list, and we can't permit that. We've got to be on the list. We can argue about the details once we get them on the list, but we got to get them on the list. And so that's part of what this inducement is trying to change. We've added alternative energy projects. People will immediately leap to the conclusion this is done because of the wind projects. No, it's not. Wind is one small component, or large, depending on your point of view, but a component of the overall aspects of trying to develop alternative energy as a sector in our environment. Right now, Mother Nature was very kind to us in Jefferson County. We have at least 4 more sites along the Black River that the IDA has identified that could be developed into hydro projects. Why not take advantage of those? We have substantial biomass resources. Ask Larry Richardson at Fort Drum. He can tell you about those biomass resources. We've got photovoltaic. We're a great site for photovoltaic. Geothermal. You just saw one of the schools, Indian River, just develop a geothermal activity to support their reduced cost of energy and using green energy. So when we say energy, yes, wind is included as part of that, but that is not the purpose. The purpose is we see alternative energy as a sweet spot for development in Jefferson County. There are 2. Value-added agriculture, you know, the kinds of things that make the products, the wonderful products we make, more valuable. That's an aspect we need to worry about. The other is alternative energy. New York City, Boston, Washington have RFPs on the street which say we need energy, alternative energy. Where are we going to get it? And I'm suggesting to you that the potential for providing that energy to these communities can lead to an enormous change in how we view economic development in the county. We call it working to our sweet spots. It's something the board has been working hard on for 4 years now. These are not, we don't pull these out of the air. There's an awful lot of effort that goes into the planning, and this is all part of that. The last thing is we're simply cleaning up a lot of the language that's in there. There's some stuff that really no longer applies. You know, that was more than a decade ago. It simply doesn't apply. So some of that is being cleaned up. But the 2 issues that I know are concerning to you is the environmental energy kind of thing, and the other is the term of the pilot. So we're presenting this as a draft. We present this to everybody as a draft. We've held public hearings. As I told you, we sent out 250 certified letters to all the taxing jurisdictions. We've had very little pushback on this. We did get the Supervisors Association made an appearance at the most recent public hearing, voiced their concern about the term of the pilot or the UTEP. And we've noted that. All of the comments that we hear, the input we get, will be handled to our board, and they'll spend a good deal of time trying to determine what is of value, how to weigh that against what they think, and this kind of stuff. In my view, you have done a great job in giving us the kind of leadership in the role of IDA board members that have enabled us to move forward. And I would suggest to you tonight, whatever the reaction is to the UTEP, we need to do this more collectively. We need to do this more collegiately. We need to understand your concerns, and hopefully you can understand some of the development issues we face, and that we develop a uniform strategy for moving this community forward. We can do that. We're on the cusp of doing something pretty exciting here, but we need everybody to pitch in and make that work. Mr. Chairman, I'll shut up, which is pretty hard for me. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything. Joe Russell promised to stay here and keep me out of jail, so if I said anything that's headed in that direction, Joe, you better let me know. So,
Do we have any questions? Legislator Peck?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I plead negligence. It's been a while since I saw your draft UTEP, but just to double check, you mentioned 20 years. Was that the only option that you had within the UTEP was 20 years, or did you have other lengths of time?
It's a good question, John, and actually the 20 years misleading in the sense that while the pilot could last 20 years, we wouldn't, in the pilot, in the UTEP, we don't plan on abating any more than 50% of taxes over any period of time. It's simply to set this agreement in place for that length of time. And typically we want these to relate to the funding so that if a client comes to us and says, look, we need to borrow $250 million to make this happen, Can you align your pilot with the same term as the funding mechanism? So if a bank says, we'll lend you the money over 20 years and you're going to amortize at this rate, but in order to do that, we need the ability to make sure our taxes are not going to go up over that period of time. That's why that's set up. So it's not a given.
Okay, so then as you've said before that, the UTEP is just to be able to establish a benchmark, a base agreement to be able to work with for developers, and then you deviate from there. So if you set within the UTEP then 10 or 15 years instead, then you still always have the option to be able to deviate from that if it warrants for, the desire of the developer to have that extra time for funding terms, correct?
Yes. Basically what this agreement allows is for us to move forward on projects that fit within this criteria. It doesn't mean, and I hope Bob would agree with this, I'd like to put him on the spot because he's quiet up there, but I hope he would agree that we never advance one of these things without talking to the county first about its impact. And particularly if we know that this is an issue that is contentious for you. Let's take wind, and there's no point in kidding around here. That's the most contentious thing we deal with. We're not pro-wind. I think I happen to think wind will be okay, but I'm not advocating it. What I am advocating, though, is that it seems to have value to the community. Now it's up to you guys to decide whether or not you want it. And it's the same thing when we deal with some of these projects. The last wind go around, we sat with every single taxing jurisdiction often, regularly, to make sure that we were all in step in terms of what we were trying to do. I would see that occurring with every development, whether it's wind or a couple of manufacturers we're working with, or, well, I better not get into too much detail. I can get in trouble, but yes, we would work with you closely.
David, would you please come to the microphone?
Sorry about that. So just so the 20-year pilot, if we went that far, would not exceed the benefit if you read the UTEP of a 15-year pilot that provides 50% over 15 years. It would just spread that same benefit out over a long period of time. There wouldn't be any greater benefit.
Well, I guess it's just the point is what I'm trying to come to is a matter of bargaining. Don't weaken our position. If you can always deviate the UTEP, then why weaken our position in a way by saying going longer terms at 50%?
Agreed. You would.
You've already had that complaint from the town supervisors, and I guess I'll reflect also that concern too of going a longer term. Don't create something that would weaken our position.
I absolutely agree with that, John. There's no point as a negotiator. Understand the position the IDA takes. We start out by reflecting the needs of the developer. That's our mission. We got to attract them, okay? So now we get them in town and we start talking to them. Now we have to turn and wear another hat, which is what are the needs of the community? What do they want? We're in the process of meeting with a couple of towns right now because we have a project coming into their area. We want to find out what they're thinking. So to your point, we never give away when we're negotiating anything up front. What we do is we try to test the waters. Will you live with a 10-year pilot? I can't do that, because my financing guys say, no, I can't do that. Well, what can you do? Well, I can do 25 years. We're not going to do any 25 years, blah, blah, blah. You never give away anything, as they used to say, never smarten up a chump, but you never give that away going in. You can't negotiate that way. You got to start small and work your way up. And there's a lot of benefits, by the way, that should be considered when these projects are looked at. Not only the benefit of the UTEP, that is to say how much tax revenues are coming into the community, but typically these larger projects can be influenced so that they negotiate additional benefit. Maybe somebody needs a new fire truck. Well, okay, let's put that into the mix. And we learn that by sitting down with the taxing entities and trying to figure out what they need or want. So like any negotiation, you start small and work your way up and go only as far as you think you can do it that will meet the approval of the people like yourself. So I don't know if that answers your question. Dave's point, to reinforce that again, yes, it says 20 years, but we won't exceed a maximum benefit of 50%, even if it runs over 20 years. The point again there is that it fixes whatever the schedule is. We did this with the Morgan project in the town of Watertown. Worked with the town on this. They needed a longer pilot, but they also needed to fix whatever their tax rate was going to be over a certain period because the guys who funded them wanted that. So the cost to the county, if you can consider this cost, because it's all new money, but the cost to the county was no more than if it had been a 10-year pilot. It was actually a 12-year. So these things are a matter of negotiation. And I don't say we do this perfectly. Trust me, I don't tell you that. We do our best. We work hard at it. We've done it many, many times. Doesn't mean it's always 100%. Dave?
If you would, Dave, please, just...
I think I know where you're coming from, John. One of the reasons why we've even looked at expanded from a 15-year UTEP to a 20-year UTEP is in today's world we have these clients, we call them clients, we have companies that are looking at coming to Jefferson County. I can tell you that it's kind of astounding. We were looking at numbers last week. Since 2000, in the last 15, 16 years, we've brought in over $1 billion through the IDA in investment into Jefferson County. This does not include Fort Drum, but we have customers, people that are looking to expand. Either they expand or they come to Jefferson County. The first thing they do is they take this document and they look at it and say, what kind of trouble, what is our possibilities? Where do we lie? And are we going to have to go out and really go outside of what they're offering right up front? I can tell you, basically, when we negotiated with one of our great cheese plants down in Adams, we were fighting against Cuba, New York. And they needed to know what we could offer right up front. So that's why we've looked at it and we've said, okay, so we've always had a 15-year in there. Now with the extra cost, when you get into 30 million, 50 million, 300 million, and the extra cost, they want to know right up front that they're going to have the possible ability to go to a 20-year to fit in their financing. They'll walk right away from Jefferson County without seeing that up front. That's why we put that in there. It's still a negotiation point from our end. We still look at the best deal for our community. But that's why we've looked at the 20-year, because that's where we've seen most of the financing look to settle is in that 20-year period. That's from our standpoint as the board.
Thank you.
At least another quick point, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes I think the IDA is considered something of a secret society. We try to keep our light under a bushel. That's not intentional in the sense that the people that we deal with, the clients that we deal with, the customers that we deal with, want to be very careful about how much information we share with the general public. And so we have, on one hand, the need to be a public responsive body. And we may be the only one up here who broadcasts our board members, our board meetings. You can go online and see when we screw up. I comb my hair, but it still looks terrible. But at the end of the day, when we get to the public session and portion of our business, we have to reveal all of this. But in these negotiations, when things are so sensitive and so tentative, we have to be very, very sure that they don't flood the market with that information and cause these people to go nuts. We don't sign many NDAs because we have the trust of the people that we deal with. They respect that we're not going to go out and blab it around the world, that we're working with several companies. We just gave Bill, as part of his orientation a couple of days ago, and I think the rest have seen it, the list of some of the people we're currently working with. It's a fairly extensive list. It's a full-time activity. It has nothing to do with pilots. We're not talking about a pilot except maybe in one instance on that entire list. It's other activities which as your development arm, the IDA, the LDC, your development activities, we try to speak on behalf of the community. No, we don't always do it perfectly, and no, we trip up once in a while, and yes, I have a big mouth, I'll admit that. But by God, there's nobody who is stronger feeling about this county than I am. And anybody who takes a shot at Jefferson County is probably going to get some pushback from me. And when I go to Albany, because we're a member of the statewide organization of IDAs and so on, I pound the table, and some of the staff members have heard me do it. I want to know why Northern New York is not getting recognition that it deserves. Why do we end up looking at the thruway and suddenly nothing happens north of it? Well, bull. Everything happens north. And in my opinion, if we're in a position to start providing energy to the big cities, guess who's going to take on a whole new point of view? And so this is kind of some of the things we're thinking about. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, is that?
We have another question. Chairman Gray?
One of the things that I work so very hard to do is to make sure that when Mr. Gray appears in television and in newspapers, he's supportive of what we're doing. I recognize his influence in the community, and I mean that, Scott. I'm serious about that. I know we have to please the people who are elected, and you represent all of these folks, and I understand that. But value is in many ways is in the eyes of the beholder, right? And so what we've tried to do as an IDA is figure out how to quantify that. And we do it by a fairly intense investigation process. And we now have, and in fact I just got this morning, I just approved the latest rendition of an evaluation tool that was put together by all of the IDAs and many others, including the Comptroller's Office in the state of New York, where we uniformly now have a tool which enables us to assign value to these projects. Now, value, you may think the most important thing is number of employees, okay? That's a valuable thing to consider. You may think that improving the tax base by 10% is a valuable activity, or something between the two. Or you may say, my God, this project, we have always needed a widget factory in the county. We can make widgets better than anybody else, and by God, this allows us to do that. So value, in many ways, is how you perceive it to be. That said, there is a very intense mechanism used to assign this value. We go through this whole process, and I guess you should know that these board members do not accept necessarily what staff puts on in front of them. We go through 2, 3, 4 months of evaluation. We take all the numbers we get, all the business plans we can find, everything that we can get our hands on. We try to develop a bottom line. Is this good or is this bad? And it's good based on blank. When we bring that to these guys, Mr. Aliasso is one of these young fellows who is pretty damn sharp. You're going to look at that and he's going to say, wait a minute, listen, I don't agree with that. You know, you should have said this, and you tell me why you did this, and so on. I'm not picking on poor Rob, but there is no acceptance universally just because we put it on the table. These guys work hard at trying to define what that value is, Scott, and I share with you, we think it's valuable, but at the end of the day, if it comes back to you guys, you're going to look at your value proposition and say, yeah, it's good for us. No, it's not good for us. You know, I like wind. I don't like wind. It means more money. It doesn't mean more money. Not enough employees. Whatever you think, that's the determination you make, not we make. We're going to present all the facts to you as best we can, and then you got to make the decision at the end of the day.
Further questions? Yes, Legislator Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Don. From what I'm understanding, the 20-year is basically the carrot that we put out there that says this is available to you. You've got to qualify for it. It's not just a blanket thing that we give to everyone. Is that a correct analogy?
That is a correct analogy, yep.
Then I wouldn't have a problem with that.
There's no, nobody says because it's in the document that we use that as the principle. We don't do that. It affords the opportunity, perhaps, and it may encourage somebody to investigate further. But to John's point, they've got to prove the case. They've got to build a case that we can, with good conscience, this is my county. You know, I've been doing this stuff. Jimmy and I have been working on stuff for the last 30, 40 years. You know, this is mine. Why would I want to negatively impact myself? I wouldn't want to do that, and I wouldn't want to do that to any of my friends and neighbors either in the county. So they got to justify it to me. They got to justify it to these guys and the staff and the attorneys and the comptroller's office and the Office of Budget. All of these people are looking in over our shoulder for everything we do. And if we don't, the comptroller just put out a report yesterday. You may have seen that. You know, you look at that report and you wonder what the hell IDAs do, frankly. But the answer is all they can quantify is the financial arrangements we make. And that's such a small piece of what your development people do. You guys got a problem in your business? More often than not, they call us and say, look, I don't know what to do with this. What do I do? It may or may not have anything to do with Section 18A of the General Municipal Law. It have something to do with something else completely. But we're here to try to help them. And that's what we do. I don't say we 100%, but we make our damnedest effort.
Legislator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to dismiss anything that your staff and the board does. I think you do a fine job at what you do and trying to keep informed.
Oh, here comes the but.
Certainly I keep in touch with Mr. Madison over current affairs within agricultural things. But I think the point that, as far as an elected official that is trying to be made, is that the UTEP is the agreement that you can use and go forth and deal with a company whereby you don't have to come back to us for any additional permissions. Correct?
Unless there's a deviation.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the concern is over 20 years being included into it at all. That's why you've had concern from the Supervisors Association. I think as far as when you start talking about a value-added project, if it requires 20 years, then that needs to be something that has comfort level from the affected jurisdictions, in my opinion, whereby you're going towards a deviation anyways, which then goes back to the local boards again. They have that buy-in, they have that approval, they have that consensus on going forward with you. So if you're going to be getting enough voices saying that they have concerns with 20% being included with this, take it seriously then. And let's talk about it a little bit more before you settle on a UTEP that has that included in there, where you don't have full buy-in from local jurisdictions, but you're telling your local jurisdictions that this is in here and this could be an option that we're going to force on you.
The reason we're here tonight, John, is to do just that. And that's why these guys are sitting here. They're going to take this back. They're here to hear your comments. They're going to take this back to the board meetings. They're going to look at the public hearing results. They're going to look at all the letters we've gotten, which are few. And then they're going to say, okay, there's a concern here. We ought to adjust that. And that's, I'm just standing up here to be shot at. These are the guys that make the final decision about what we propose. So, sure, we'll take a look at that.
May I make a suggestion, and whether this is something that's a possibility, that as far as, when you talk about time frames of UTEP agreements, that time frame, is it attached to a particular expectation, or is it attached, we talk about 20% being attached, 20 years being attached to its amount of time of financing. So is there a particular scale that you can maybe work with to develop within the UTEP to maybe quantify that in some meetings?
Project scale, project size scale.
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer is that was the intention. I can't imagine, having listened to the discussion for hours now, and we've been at this 2 years, Dave, am I thinking, or maybe more? The discussion has centered on that yes, it's a 20-year potential, but only if this is an enormous project, and enormous is by anybody's definition. To me, one of the $300 million projects we got on the drawing board here, that's an enormous project. I mean, that is a game changer in terms of the tax base that you guys are going to be working with. And so if that were the case, then I think these guys would be willing to look at a 20-year. Now, if it's a $20 million project or $10 million project, unless there was some essential value here that I can't foresee, my guess is they probably would reject that and probably say, look, this is too long. We need to do something else. But that's the kind of dialogue that goes on every time we present one of these projects to these guys, and these guys vent that pretty well. And when they're satisfied they've vented enough, then we'll pass it along. But they'll take months if it's necessary to make that happen. So, yes, John, I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a scale. I don't know it's quantified because you never know what these things are going to look like when you face one. But I think it's there. I know I have it in my head. I'm not going to walk into a $2 or $3 million project, which we have many, and say, we're just going to offer you a benefit. Now, remember, the benefit is based on tax dollars which you currently do not have. We're not, in spite of what people try to tell you, we are not giving away tax dollars. We are saying that if we can encourage you to develop, we'll give you some incentive to start your business. And as those businesses mature and grow in our county, that incentive device evaporates. But you got to get them started. First 7 years, anybody of you who ever been in business, you would know this, young fella. You're in business, the first 7 years are going to be the toughest damn years you ever had. I don't care how good you are. It's no different in the ag business. It's a tough business, and it's getting tougher. We've got to try to help these guys be successful in our county. Otherwise, we can't employ our kids. What are we going to do then? I'm not bringing the kids issue in, but that's really what it's all about.
Other questions or comments? Would it be fair to say that it requires a modicum of trust? I mean, you have a board that we are supposed to have some respect for and think that your intentions are good. Having said that, if there are no other questions, I don't want... Legislator Doldo.
Just a question for you, Don, as far as bringing these big companies in with jobs and everything else, is that tied at all to their tax deviation over the period of years? I know I was on Empire Development Zone Board, and one of my people that they really didn't have any follow-up with them to see that they were filling the jobs they said they were going to do. There was nobody out there, and they just kind of let it go. I was pretty upset because here we gave them a tax break, but nobody was checking up on them, and that's what one of my concerns is with this.
I agree. And, frankly, that's, Anthony, one of the real issues that ABO and the Comptroller's Office are looking at, because some communities have extended benefits, and they've never realized a result from those benefits extended. The reason that we, in this IDA, cannot move forward with a project until they fill out a complete application is the criteria for what happens if they fail to meet the benefits that they've identified. We have in our application a clear picture that those benefits will be recalled. That is to say, there's a recapture clause. They call it a clawback. They sign an agreement that says, I understand, If we screw up and we're going to say we're going to employ 200 and we only employ 3, we're going to come back at you unless there's really good reason. Now, in the years I've been doing this, which is more than most people on the board would like it, but it's been a while, I've only seen 2 deliberate attempts to defraud the IDA, to defraud the community in terms of what they tried to accomplish. Only 2. And in one case, it actually turned out that it was a mistake in numbers, but that's neither here nor there. So, but we watched that very carefully, because if we didn't, first of all, you guys would lose trust in us. And this is what Mike is saying. This is all about trust. If you don't think we're doing the job on your behalf well, you're going to boot us out, and you should. And the ABO is leaning over our shoulder, and we have to report every single month about what the heck's going on. In addition to that, the comptroller is looking at us every single time. Gabe Deo, who is deputy comptroller, and I have got to know each other pretty well because we exchange information all of the time. And so clients know that if they get benefits, they are at risk if they don't do what they said they're going to do. And we make sure of that. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise we lose all the credibility the agency would have. And besides, Hageman would never buy me lunch if that happened.
Well, that was part of my issue with the Empire Development Zone, is they never followed up afterwards, and I think there was a lot of businesses taking advantage, getting the tax breaks with no benefit to the community over it. So that's one of my concerns with this.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Legislator Nabolani.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don, thank you for coming again 2 weeks in a row here, and the board members also joining you. I can appreciate what the points Mr. Goldo and Mr. Gray and everyone makes. I think they're good points, and I think the same way. But I think really, to sum it up, I think it's what the Chairman Mongelli said about the trust factor. There's got to be, obviously, faith and trust that the right decisions will be made. And I sat at the former Black River Valley Club, and I listened to CEOs right here in Jefferson County say how difficult it is to do business in this state. And I know the retention is a big part of what you're doing right now. And a lot of us run businesses, so we know how difficult it is. So appreciation for the job at task, and the need for tools in the toolbox. I just think it's important that we keep an open mind and have a level of trust. And I think, to sum up, appreciate you coming here and explaining in detail, the UTEP idea. And really all I wanted to, the only comment I wanted to make, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add to Jim's comment. The level of trust between the IDA and the legislature, I think, can improve, and we'll work hard to do that. We want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with the actions that we are doing. And in any form or fashion, you want to meet in the telephone booth downstairs, I'll be happy to do that. I know our board would. But I would also say we know that you have an issue of trust with your constituents. People voted for you to watch out for them and their behalf. And we know that. They didn't vote for me. I didn't run for office, not since school board days. So, I'm not the elected official. You are. So our mission is to try to make sure that the trust that you give to us is well-founded. And so we need to spend some time once in a while. I'd love to sit and talk economic strategy with you guys and see if what we're thinking as a board makes sense to you guys, because ultimately it's going to pass or fail right here in this room. So give us the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and we'll do that. Mr. Gray has been offering this kind of thing, and I would encourage that to happen. Please let us do this. Days, nights, weekends, I don't care. It doesn't make any difference. Just let us know and we'll be there.
Further questions or comments? Well, I see the folks in the audience there.
First off, I want to say, hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee, for having us here tonight. I have to tell you, from our board standpoint, we are your board. We're your IDA board. So the comments that you made tonight, Legislator Peck, I'm sure that our board members and myself are going to take them into consideration as we do every comments. And there's some things that we know we can do, we can't do. Your board last year put out a resolution stating what you wanted to see in wind and energy. We took that and we incorporated that into this new UTEP. We put your word for word in here. That's what we need to do, is take care of what you guys feel, and then you can take it back. I wish the word pilot never existed. I'm telling you, I really wish, but it's there. It's a tool that we need to use, and I can tell you that about 10 or 12 years ago, our board, the IDA board, decided that we were going to look at projects, and we developed a but-for idea that says, but for us helping you, would you still do this project? But for the incentives that we can give you, would you still do this project? And there was some projects that we turned down because they're already halfway into their project and they were looking for incentives, and we said no. Since then, New York State has come on and they recently have said, you know, IDAs, you should have a but for. We were 10 years at least ahead of them doing it for Jefferson County. Thank you for allowing us to come here tonight.
Certainly, Mr. Converse. Director Burns, you had a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a question, Don, if you don't mind. Since Apex has already made application for the Glue Island project, I'm just curious, are they going to fall under the old UTEP, or will they fall under the proposed UTEP that you've presented here this evening?
Well, it's a good question. By rights at the moment, since the application came in a couple of weeks ago, and we haven't decided yet, based on all this activity, what the new UTEP will be, it would be very hard to suggest to them that they would fall under the new UTEP. On the other hand, I think you will find that this will be a complete deviation if it goes forward, and as a result, whatever is decided, whatever is determined, evaluated, whatever, it will show up in front of this board, even if we comply, which we fully intend to do, with your resolution that says anything above 25 megawatts is fully taxed. We're going to comply with that aspect. But we also want you to have an opportunity to say that this is valuable to our community or not. So at the end of the day, I'm not trying to waltz around the answer. I guess it would depend, in the end of the day, on the board. But I think based on the fact that we took the application when this current policy existed, it probably would fall under that. Hard to do it retroactively. But I don't think there's anything in the new policy that would affect the negotiations, to be honest with you. I think they're going to ask for, if they do come forward with all the details, I think they're going to ask for a 20-year. Whether we grant that or not is another issue, and whatever other activities they're going to look for. Here again, we understand that the county's position right now is we'll review a pilot, we'll accept a pilot, but for the county's portion of the tax, it will be 100%. That's what we understand the resolution to be. And so we will take that as part of our negotiation, and we will try to get the best we can for Sackett's Harbor, that is to say the town of Sackett's Harbor, the Sackett's Harbor school system, and the county of Jefferson. Those three affected taxing jurisdictions will be affected by this development. So we'll try to keep all of these things in play so that you have a complete understanding. Last year, it took a year and a half worth of work to try to get it to a point where we could actually bring it to the board for a vote. And then you will remember it was split 8-7, and even that was difficult to achieve. But, it is the kind of dialogue that this organization, in my view, is set up to have. And we understand that there are going to be agreements and disagreements amongst all of you and with us. We just don't want to make it disagreeable. But let's talk our way through this. So if you disagree, nobody's going to get upset here. It's when we're disagreeable sometimes that causes the issue.
Further comments, questions? I'd like to thank you, CEO Alexander, for taking the time, and your board members to come and present tonight this very interesting information. And then I would like to address the unasked question, I am an excellent cook.
Well, it's about time somebody revealed that, I tell you that. Thank you, Michael.
Onward to resolutions. The first resolution, finance and rules.
All righty. First resolution this evening is authorizing Workforce Investment Act Chief Elected Official Local Agreement.
May I have a motion, please? Legislator Nabawanek, Legislator Drake. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Next, authorizing appointments and reappointments to the Jefferson Lewis Workforce Development Board.
Motion, please. Legislator McBride, Legislator... Legislator Johnson. Thank you, Bill. Legislator Bill. Legislator Johnson, thank you. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next is amending the 2017 county budget in relation to the Employment and Training Department.
I remind myself of Governor Perry. Anyway, motion, please. Legislator Nabawanek, Legislator Fitzpatrick. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next is amending the 2016 county budget in relation to health benefits, and on your desk is a revised resolution, and we're down to $185,000.
Motion, please. Legislator Fitzpatrick. Legislator McBride, thank you. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Amending the 2017 county budget in relation to the Fire and Emergency Management Department grant.
A motion, please. Legislator Nabawanek. Legislator Johnson. Thanks for having your name tag right there. Yeah. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. This will be the one that, this will be the new one. It's not on, maybe not on your, it was in the, on your desk when you came in regarding our relationship with our sales tax with the state.
The last resolution of the evening is concurring in the request for enactment of home rule legislation, Assembly Bill A-6833, Senate Bill S-5293, amending New York State tax law to authorize the County of Jefferson to impose an additional rate sales tax of 1%. This is the second of three steps over the course of time we're required to do. Scott found out yesterday that the bills had been introduced, so we need to speed it along, and that's why we're doing it actually 30 days ahead of schedule. So that's why we're bringing it before you tonight.
Could I have a motion, please? Legislator Drake, Legislator Johnson. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. On to General Services Committee sponsored resolutions.
First one this evening is amending the 2017 county budget to recognize insurance recovery and allocating the same in the Sheriff's Department budget.
I have a motion, please. Legislator Nabawanek, Legislator Fitzpatrick. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing agreements with the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, Stop DWI Crackdown Enforcement Grant, and amending the 2017 county budget in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Legislator Drake, Legislator Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Health and Human Services Committee sponsored resolutions.
Amending the 2017 county budget relative to the community services programs and authorizing amended agreements in relation thereto.
Motion, please. Legislator McBride, Legislator Fitzpatrick. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next is amending the 2017 county budget to reappropriate the Delivery System Reform Incentive Payment Program Fund for the Community Services Department.
Motion, please. Legislator Drake, Legislator Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The last resolution, amending the 2016 county budget relative to additional revenue from the New York State Office of Children and Family Services for Youth Development Programs.
Motion, please. Legislator McBride, Legislator Fitzpatrick. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. There are informational items in the packet, but at this time, your you're welcome to look those over. At this time, we're going to, I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session to discuss negotiations on a labor contract. Legislator Fitzpatrick, Legislator Nabawana, all in favor? We're in, I guess, I don't know if I need a gavel for that.